Gang, what's up? Aaron here, Canadian Looney. Let me tell you a little secret. Canada is in big trouble. Is it too late? I don't know. We've got Melissa Lantsman exposing Mark Carney, Pierre Poilievre doing the same, Nick Nanos giving us an update in the polls, and National Post. We're even having our big newspaper that's a little bit more centered than most other media outlets. Let's take a peek. This should be an interesting one. Let's go.
Oh, yeah.
This is a $5 bill. It's got no intrinsic value, really. It's just a piece of plastic. And this is a shredder in my office. And just like that, the $5 bill is gone. Doing something like this is totally absurd and nothing that any person in their right mind would do. It's literally making money disappear out of thin air, right out of your wallet for no reason whatsoever. Long story short, if your spouse pulled something like this, they'd be sleeping on the couch for a long, long time. But this is exactly what our government is doing every single day. They're essentially reaching their hands into your wallet, pulling out that $5 bill and sending it straight into the shredder, even if you don't realize it. Let me explain. Let's rewind the clock just for a second. It's 2022, and stuff gets really expensive really fast. A basket of grocery goes from $50 to $100. Gas hits $2 a liter, and rents downtown spike to thousands of dollars a month. We all remember what an awful time that was for everybody. And why did it happen? 2 words: government spending. You see, in 2020, the federal government was already running deficits. But in that year, they started running massive deficits, the biggest on record, the biggest in history. Remember Justin Trudeau?
You'll forgive me if I don't think about monetary policy.
It's his government that spent more than every other government combined. So that prime minister was more expensive than every prime minister before him added together. But they couldn't just spend all of that money out of thin air. They had to get it from somewhere. The solution for Ottawa bureaucrats was simple. They just printed more money. Easy as pie. $500 billion of brand new bills created just like that, out of thin air. So let me spell this out for you. I had a $5 bill, and you had a $5 bill. And then the government keeps printing $5 bills. So what went from 2 $5 bills is now 12 $5 bills. So it's not that you don't have $5. It's that your $5 is not worth $5 anymore. So before, the balance was equal. But now, there's more money floating around in the economy. And more money means higher demands for goods and services. And when demand goes up, the price goes up too. So even though the amount of money you have didn't change, the value of it did change. Your dollar goes less far. Without you even knowing it, the government took the $5 bill and chopped it right in half. 2022 was a long time ago, but the inflation created by the Liberal government didn't go away. We just got used to it. Groceries are still expensive. Housing is still expensive. And everyday necessities in life are still expensive. And it's getting worse, month after month. Let's take the cost of groceries. Right now, grocery inflation is 70% higher than it should be. If your grocery bill cost $100 in 2015, it now costs almost $150 10 years later. But that's not it. Inflation's getting worse too. This year alone, the average Canadian family will have to add $700 onto the cost of their grocery bill. So what's the government going to do about it? They're going to spend even more money. Mark Carney's deficit is projected to be double the deficit of Justin Trudeau, who was already the most expensive prime minister in Canadian history. So a really simple question about what this government is doing: have they learned nothing at all? Have they learned nothing from all of the studies, all of the testimony, all of the first-hand experience that say government drives inflation? Or do they just not care because they know that they and their Liberal friends will get rich as the rest of the country suffers? They don't know what the real answer is, and I'll leave it to you to decide. But what I do know is this. The longer that this government keeps spending like drunken sailors, the more spending gets out of control. Just add more and more of your dollars to the shredding pile. I want your money to stay in your wallet where it belongs. So we're going to fight this government's reckless spending with everything we've got. If you don't want to be stuck paying for government debt for generations, and if you want to stop liberal inflation, make sure that you like and share this video and tell everybody about the liberal money shredder that's making your dollars disappear without you even knowing it.
Oh, yeah. No place better symbolizes the Canada-US tug of war for auto jobs than the river separating Detroit from Windsor. A tug of war that has intensified as President Trump has made clear he wants our auto sector and our auto jobs. Now, of course, Mark Carney promised that he could, quote, handle Trump, that he could, quote, negotiate a win, and that he would have a deal by July 21st. Well, here we are. It's almost November, and there's no deal, no win, no elbows, and increasingly, no jobs. In fact, the Prime Minister promised that he was going to build an all-in-Canada network of automotive production. Since that time, what we've seen is the tragic loss of so many jobs. Just recently, Stellantis announced it was moving operations from a 3,000-worker plant in Brampton. And of course, there's been about 1,000 workers who lost their jobs at the Carney plant in Ingersoll, and another 700 workers in Oshawa that have lost their jobs. Meanwhile, GM has announced that it's making $4 billion of investment in the U.S. Stellantis, $13 billion of investment. That's money leaving Canada to go to the United States of America, making them richer and us poorer, all bursting in and shattering into smithereens the promises Mark Carney made to those workers that he would protect their jobs. Of course, he made promises that no one could ever keep, and he broke promises that he should have been able to direct. We needed to focus on the things we can control on the Canadian side of the border. For example, the government's plan to ban internal combustion engines, gas and diesel-powered vehicles, is already killing jobs, even though it's not yet implemented. Because, of course, if you're a business looking at making an investment in a plant, you're not going to do it if that plant is going to be banned or severely penalized by a government mandate 3 or 4 years down the road. In fact, you'd move it to another place, like the U.S., where there is no such mandate. Conservatives believe that Canadian business and workers decide what cars to make, and Canadian consumers should decide what cars to buy. In other words, get rid of the mandate and put you back in the driver's seat on the vehicles you choose to drive. Secondly, I don't know what's worse, Trump's tariffs or Carney's taxes. He's got an industrial carbon tax that applies to almost everything that goes into making an automobile. The plastics, the rubber, the steel, and the other metals that could potentially be produced or altered or changed are all more expensive because of an industrial carbon tax that does not exist on the American side of the border, but does on our side. This drives production and paychecks out of our country. Let's get rid of the entire carbon tax for everyone, for everything, for good. Let's cut tax on investment by allowing people to reinvest, businesses to reinvest their capital gains tax-free as long as it's invested here in Canada. In fact, let's take all taxes off of Canadian-made automobiles so that our consumers have an incredible incentive to buy Canadian. We need to fight for our workers, fight for our people and our production. We need to start to put Canadian business, Canadian workers, and Canadian quality of life first. In fact, let's put Canada first.
So certainly another action-packed week of Canadian politics. Nick Nanos joins us now to break down some of his latest numbers. He's the founder and chief data scientist at Nanos Research. Good morning, Nick.
Good morning, Matt.
Let's get into it, shall we? Let's first look at ballot support. The Conservatives still very close to the Liberals this week, which is interesting too. We heard from Pierre Poilievre. We've heard a lot from Mark Carney as well. So what are you seeing in the numbers this week?
Oh, what we're seeing basically is a statistical dead heat between the Liberals and the Conservatives. There's only 2 percentage points, Matt, between those two parties. The margin of error is plus or minus 3. And this Matt, and in the context of the expected federal budget, the Liberals are a minority government. It's going to be a high-stakes game of political brinksmanship because we have a dead heat almost when it comes to ballot support. The Liberals don't have the votes today in terms of passing the budget, and who knows what might happen, what the Conservatives and New Democrats might do. Could we, Matt, brace yourself, could an election happen?
I know, yeah, and that's the biggest question, right? Because we talked about it, and the Liberals even themselves earlier this week, at least at different points, some skepticism about the fact if they were actually going to be able to pass their own budget, and it's not necessarily something that Canadians I think want to see maybe at this point is another possible federal election.
Yeah, the thing is federal election is kind of like a trip to the dentist, Matt. Everybody knows that they have to go, but they don't necessarily enjoy it. No disrespect to all the viewers who are dentists out there. But, the thing is that when we look at numbers like this, I think what's clear that the Liberals have signaled is that they're not going to play any political games. If there is an election, it won't be as a result of a mistake. It'll be a result of the fact that they put forth a budget to the House of Commons, and that they'll allow all the members of the House of Commons to either vote or not, or vote for or against it. So, that's why it's really going to be high stakes. It's interesting that the Prime Minister right now is out in Asia, but realistically, he's going to have to spin back to Canada because the domestic political heat is going to be on the rise in the next couple of weeks.
I was going to say less than 2 weeks until we do actually see that budget. Okay, let's look at some of the top issues for Canadians. Speaking of which, too, and what Canadians have top of mind right now. What are we looking at?
It's interesting. We just saw the Doug Ford ad about Trump and Ronald Reagan. But, the thing is that when we look at the top three issues, jobs and the economy, Trump-U.S. relations, and inflation, those are clearly driving the agenda. Because when we roll up those things, about 4 out of every 10 Canadians give a tip of the hat to those issues as the ones that they're most worried about, followed by healthcare and then immigration. But, the key takeaway for this is that every week, Canadians are more likely to be worried about pocketbook issues and paying for the bills and what Donald Trump and the trade negotiations might mean for their paychecks and their jobs.
Yeah, and how hard it continues to hit Canadians, I think, right across the board. Nick, appreciate your time this morning. Nick Nanos, the founder and chief data scientist at Nanos Research. Thanks.
Next. Yeah.
Welcome back to the National Post Politics Bureau, where I'm here with Christopher Nardi, a reporter in the Bureau. And Chris, we're talking about some comments from Liberals yesterday. They're preparing their budget for November 4th. And we heard from Stephen McKinnon, the House Leader, saying he's getting a little worried about opposition parties because they need opposition parties to support them on this. If they don't, they lose a confidence vote. We're back into an election. What do we think? Is this negotiating tactics, or should we really be concerned?
I mean, it's a minority government, so there's always a chance that there's an election that's called, and I can hear a whole bunch of Canadians and viewers fretting at the notion, just barely 6 months after the last one.
Yeah, you and I just recovered from an election campaign.
We're still catching up on that rest.
Yeah.
But fundamentally, I kind of ascribe to a simple rule, which is when a political party and a government especially is concerned about something, they're extra quiet about it. They don't want to talk about it. They want to solve it and not create a buzz. Whereas if they do express concerns, you're more likely to be creating a political situation where you're trying to force your opponents, or in this case, your dance partners, ideally for the budget in their mind, into an outcome. And that outcome is supporting the budget, keeping the government in place, and going on and surviving another budget election. What's interesting about this budget is that it is one of the first confidence votes the Liberals, under either Justin Trudeau or Mark Carney, have faced since the end of the supply and confidence agreement with the NDP Jagmeet Singh that ended more or less about this time last year. And so they haven't faced many, they've managed to skirt for the most part any previous confidence votes they would have had or successfully passed them, but they've been tested in managing a minority parliament and getting big confidence motions through. They've been tested very little. And so they've shown very little capacity to negotiate.
Yeah.
And so this is an interesting test because as of now, they don't have, they say, someone to play ball with. They're not in a supply and confidence agreement or any form of similar agreement with any party. And so they actually have to put the work in.
Yeah.
And so I find it very interesting that Stephen McKinnon is coming out saying we're concerned when truthfully his government has very little experience since 2021. the last election, in figuring these things out. So I'm curious to see how it'll go. But there will be a meeting as of the time of this filming between the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition, Conservative Pierre Poilievre. And we'll see what comes of that meeting. But truthfully, I can't sense a large appetite amongst most of the parties for an election right now.
Yeah. And the Liberals' one negotiating strategy could be to say, here's the budget, vote for it or don't. And if we go to an election, it's your fault. But there is one place where people don't believe the Liberals that we might be seeing an election. And that is something we've used a lot in the past is Polymarket. It's in a predictions market. People can bet on specific outcomes. If there were to be an election this year, 2025, called by the end of this year, only 9% of people betting on it believe that could happen. So that means basically you could say there's about a 90% chance it doesn't happen. Should we believe those numbers? Do we think this is mostly just kind of political hot air?
I mean, they're worth what they're worth, right? They're, it's a cryptocurrency platform that, people trade on and hope to make some money. What I find interesting is that when we look at those betting markets, in which, neither you nor I will ever bet on politics, but it is a sign of where people are willing to put their money.
Yeah.
And, no one bets to lose money, presumably. And so if only 9% of people think that there will actually be a fall election following a failed budget vote, it really shows that there's not a ton of belief that you can make money on the fact that there is. Anything can happen. Polymarket is not, a determiner of the future, but I think that it just goes to show that even amongst part of the public, there's no interest, there's no belief that there will be. And fundamentally, when you think about opposition parties, let's go down them one by one. The Conservatives would be reluctant to go into an election simply because polling suggests that they're still well behind Mark Carney's Liberals. And so why jump in? Pierre Poilievre faces a leadership review in January. If he loses a second election in 6 months, he's done. There's no recovering from that politically within your party. You are now branded as someone who cannot win an election.
Yeah.
The NDP isn't a party. Fundamentally, in the House of Commons, is not recognized as a party. They're in the middle of
It's true, but it sounds mean to say that.
It sounds mean, but they are not a political party. They don't have official status. They have very little funding, and they are in the middle of a leadership race, again, that I believe ends in January. So there can't be, they're broke, they have no leader, they have no structure. They'll go, but the best result that they could expect is the same, which is, I believe, 7 MPs.
Yeah.
And then the bloc could go either way, but again, I can't see them looking at polling numbers and saying, we're going to do better than how much we did in the spring election. In the spring election, the big fear for the bloc is that they would largely be erased in favor of the Liberals. The Liberals did very well in the province. The fact that they managed to maintain over 20 MPs, still down from the 30 odd that they had, for the bloc was seen as generally a win because it could have gone way worse for them. They managed to save it. Quebec is in the middle of a provincial election cycle that will be next fall, but they're really in that cycle. And so the bloc, I don't think, is willing to rock the boat. They have, I think, 22 or 20 odd MPs. They're doing okay. They have the balance of power technically. Why throw it all out for the risk of probably losing more than gaining?
Yeah.
So I just don't see an appetite, quite frankly.
One thing that's true is that there's a lot of page use to be had in being gullible about early elections.
That is true.
We're going to try to not be that. We'll be the counterbalance to that. So thank you for watching. And
all we did was differ with them economically, and Trump tried to turn them into a state.
All right, gang, we'll wrap it up right there. Aaron, Canadian Looney, get your Canadian federal politics right here. Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics. We try to show a lot of pieces in context. Like, that's the way to really figure out. Like, you can make up your own mind once you see the real politics that happen. We cover the committee videos. We cover question period, the legacy media sometimes. That's it, though. Aaron, Canadian Looney, thank you very much for watching this video. We'll catch you in the next one. Like, share, subscribe. It helps very much. We're trying to grow this thing. So smash the like, hit subscribe, get notified, share this with somebody if you really enjoyed it. We'll catch you in the next video. Thanks a lot for watching. Get your Canadian federal politics right here.